Andre, several years ago, I remember you sharing a quote with me that you had heard around that in leadership, the conversation is the work. And I think you, like me, did my head in a little bit on that, trying to figure out exactly what that is. But as time has gone on, really understanding that healthy conversations is what leadership is all about. This ongoing process of having a conversation with your team. And I know kind of a subset of that is, the tattoo that I found very curious first time I saw it. We're curious about your tattoo. Andre, can you maybe share with us your tattoo and what that has to do with conversations?
Thank you, Darren. If it's okay, I'll come back to the tattoo later in this episode. But the idea of the conversation as a work was something that, like you, struck me. Now, whether you're in leadership or in life in general, we all can improve our conversational skills. We can all get better. And one of the things I've been trying to develop a lot over the last few years is this idea of remaining curious versus being judgmental. So if you think about it, curiosity and judgment, they can't actually exist at the same place at the same time. They don't make good bedfellows. You're either curious or you're judgmental. And in conversations, that becomes a really, really interesting factor. And if I can just share a conversation which I had some years ago now, but got me thinking about healthy conversations.
Please do.
Yeah, it was a conversation we had with some people that we knew. We had gone out for a dinner with them. And the interesting thing that we noticed was the whole conversation was monopolized by the two of them. They talked about what was happening in their lives, where they'd traveled, what they were going to do, what was happening in their jobs and their careers, and so on and so forth. There was, surprisingly for my wife and myself, there was not a single question asked of us. And we had about 2.5 hours together over dinner. And it just struck me as we walked away feeling as if we didn't matter to them. There was absolutely zero interest in our life as to how narcissistic that can be. So no curiosity, no questions at all. And I'm sure that people as you're listening to this, the ones that are genuinely curious and interested, and those that just want to talk about themselves. So I use that a little bit, and it got me really thinking. And I came up with this matrix, which basically had two kind of axes on it, which is like all good consultants. It's always good to have a 2x2 matrix.
Yep.
If it makes complex things really simple. And I put this 2x2 matrix out around having healthy, productive conversations. So if you think about one axis, which is someone who has a high concern for the relationship on the north-south, and the low concern for the relationship. And on the east-west axis, on the left-hand side, is people who are not interested in seeking to understand, not curious, and the other one being very curious. So if you put the two together, it struck me that the people we were having dinner with that night were practicing or indulging in conversational narcissism. They were not really seeking to understand what was happening, and they really didn't have much concern for the relationship, if you like, that we had. So I label that conversational narcissism. There's probably a bunch of people that you think, oh man, they fit into that category. Very low curiosity, no concern for the relationship. Then if you look at the other aspects in the 2x2 matrix, you have people who are not really seeking to understand, but actually are concerned about the relationship, where they're there to announce things, to inform you of what's going on. And that's okay. There's certain times in life where people need to be able to express themselves because there is a concern for the relationship. That's okay. On the other side, which is curiosity and seeking to understand, the bottom right-hand corner, is low interest in the relationship, but actually curious. And I often talk about them as debaters, people who want to debate things. They don't really care about you, but they actually care about the topic at hand, right?
Right.
And they just want to debate. And that's fine in bits, but sometimes it can be overwhelming when you are with someone who is constantly debating everything that goes on. So the ideal place to be is a combination of high concern for the relationship and high concern for seeking to understand, being curious. And that's where skillful conversations comes in.
Yes.
So as a leader, as a human being, as you go into this world, are you really curious? Are you really concerned and demonstrating that you care about the relationship? So that's the model. And I find it incredibly useful, because now when I am in a conversation in a leadership space or in a personal space, I can categorize where the conversation is going and what I can do to pull it out, perhaps. The tattoo, right? The tattoo, be curious. So the tattoo came as a result of my daughters. We have these annual it's not actually on Father's Day, but we have these times when we go out. They take me out and we spend a day together. It's one of the most treasured parts of my life for my 4 daughters. And last year when we went out, one of the things Joy is giving me feedback. As a parent, they choose to, maybe having 4 outspoken daughters, they give you feedback. And one of the things they said, whatever you do, don't become a grumpy old man. And I'm going, wow, what do you mean? Am I becoming a grumpy old man? And they said, you definitely got tendencies towards that. And so I was like, what do you mean? I was shocked. What do you mean I'm going to become a grumpy old man? They said, you've actually losing curiosity in our lives, Dad. You need to be more curious. Wow. Because as a father, you tend to get into the space of giving advice, much like a leader does with their team. Just because you're a leader, you feel this obligation to tell people what to do rather than being curious. Yes. So one of my youngest daughter, who has a friend who's a tattooist, actually challenged me and said, you keep talking about being curious. Why don't you get it tattooed on your hand? And I thought, you know what? I better act and not just speak about it. So I did get this tattoo, and I got it on my right hand because the message is for me, not for the other person. Right. So it's on my right hand, which is as guys, we shake hands and it reads to me, but the other person can't see it because it's upside down. And that's where it comes out from. So it's my own agenda of having more skillful, meaningful conversations and connecting with people at a much deeper level than the experience we've had and have had in people who tend to be very narcissistic.
Outstanding. Thank you for sharing that, a great story, and a couple things to wrap us up, because I think we need to dive in future episodes into some of these quadrants and how do we become a skillful conversationalist. What a great goal to aspire to, something that is absolutely lacking in our culture right now. What a wonderful thing to aspire to. And I just want to call back to a previous episode about algorithms. I mean, what a great place to put your right hand. Your algorithm right there, right? Every time you go to do that, that's, reinforcing that feed. And, it's just a, great story, great example. And, in our upcoming episodes, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into how do we become skillful, can't get it out, skillful conversationalists.
Fantastic. Thank you. So your homework is to really sit down and think about where you fit in that quadrant. And ask yourself, are you a bit of a narcissistic conversationalist? And what you might need to do to be more curious and focus on the relationship.
Absolutely.
See you next week.
Thank you.